We are looking at facial expressions today. The reason I chose that as a topic is that it is so evocative and vitally important in our work as artists, whether we're painters or sculptors or draftsmen or computer artists, 3D modelers as they call it, or any of that. Facial expressions are what animates the head. We spend so much time getting better at modeling human imagery, the body, the head, that we forget to analyze or understand how it animates. So in the body, it's gesture. The way the body turns, all the different gestures, they all have meanings. And the fact that the human body can express those meanings, that makes it an art form. So we use the body as an evocative tool, in a sense, in making our work. We go to movies to see human beings interact. We don't really go to movies to see abstract shapes interact. The human figure is the most powerful and evocative image in the universe to us because we're human beings. If we were giraffes, we'd be making giraffe art, and there'd be giraffe sculpture and painting all over the place, and maybe there will be, but for us, it's the human figure. Now, with gesture, that is covered, and by some and not so much by others. So we spend a lot of time focusing on anatomy, and that's another class. I teach that all day long. But this is something different. This is how it comes alive. And if you look at art through the ages, there have been periods where it was reduced. There are cultures where it is purposely reduced. There have been various, if you look back in history, in the late or the early to mid 20th century, it was the common thought that facial expressions were derived from our culture. So what we thought about a smile was derived from what the culture taught us to think of that. Before that, about 100 years or less before that, Darwin said originally, people don't really read this book, but other than Evolution of a Species, Darwin wrote another book. And the book is The Expression of Emotions in Humans and Animals, I believe is the full title. And it is all about how we express. So if you're spending a whole lot of time learning how to draw and paint a head, or model it in clay, or do it in computer graphics, and you don't know how to make it come alive, what you're doing is essentially creating a mask. You're creating an image of a person, but it is without a spirit behind here, a heart, a soul, a mind. The facial expressions, we have this sense that we walk around all day long, and we are contained within our heads or within our bodies. We're not telling people that we're sad or happy or angry, or there are basically 6 major expressions, and I'll go through them, but we telecast it. It's anything but. We telecast our emotions 24 hours a day, or not in our sleep, but when we're awake, we are letting people know how we feel. And so it is important to know that from an analytical point of view. In other words, there's a story about Rodin, and he was saying that he went to Florence after studying a long time in France and working in France. Went down to Italy to look at the Michelangelos, and he said he was absolutely stunned by them. Just emotionally, he was stunned. But he said then when he recovered and picked himself up, then he said, well, then I started to analyze it. And that is the key, because when you analyze it, you're starting to think, well, what created that? So I was listening to a biologist the other day, and he was talking about when we look at a dog or a cat, or whatever it is, he was actually talking about octopus and squid and things like that. But when we look at an animal, we have a kind of an intuition about what they are feeling inside. And I guess one of the questioners asked him, well, is that an important thing, or is that just rubbish? He said, no, that's an important thing. That is based in something, but then you have to analyze it. So when you walk up to a person and you talk to them, what do they say? That 70% of communication is visual. So if you walked up and talked to our guy here, you'd think he was, I'm hoping that's what this creates, because that's what I was going for, that he was happy, maybe a little bit excited, because his eyes are kind of, they're a little bit open at this point. And that's a whole lot of communication. So if he had this face and he started to tell you how upset he was, you wouldn't quite buy it. And so when we talk to people and then walk away and we have an intuition that they weren't sincere or this or that, it's often that the message didn't match what we were seeing, and we call it intuition or sixth sense or whatever. But when you're talking about portraiture, portrait art, that the saying is that it is the best kind of definition I've heard of it, is that it is the depiction of the invisible by means of the visible. So what's the visible? The visible is this physical thing of a human head. You walk up, you don't talk to elbows, you don't talk to shoulders. You walk up and you look at the front of the head, and then you look in the area of the face, and that's where a lot of emotion is just telecast. It's a kind of a hot spot, more so than the shoulder. The whole body expresses, but the face is really a hot spot for it. And all these, it's the center where all the senses come from the brain. So the brain's back here, the ears go this way, the eyes come this way, the nose comes this way, the mouth is here, your nose, it's a sense. So all of these things, and the muscles of the face are expressive of that. Now, so that is the physical thing. That will tell you that it's John Doe, whoever. The spirit behind it, the character, the 1 in 6 billion personality, the fleeting emotions that come over the face, or you can sense emotion, intent, thought, all sorts of things, intelligence. I'm pretty sure you can sense that in a face too. And so, but how does that work? I mean, what manifests that? Picasso said, rather, I don't know famously, but he has some famous quotes, some of which are pretty good. He said that you can depict the person, the way they look physically, their likeness, or you can depict their spirit, but you can't do both. Well, this is about disagreeing with that. And if you look at history, or you look at artists that excel in that, I would say Augustus John or Holbein, the painter, Feshin, the Russian painter, even Sargent. You see a lot in Sargent. In sculpture, Carpeau, Houdon, Others not so much. Others, if you look at earlier what they call classical Greek art, they don't do that much. It takes a while for that to kind of come on the scene. So it's a matter of, you need both. The body is an art form because it is the image that we know. It is us. It is the most meaningful image to us, more so than anything else. And it's also highly expressive. So this is about how this part is expressive, or maybe this part, because it's not just the head, it's the way the head, the gesture of the head itself on the shoulders, the carriage as they call it. So that says a lot about a person too, and we'll cover that maybe in a separate video. But if he's looking a little bit off to the side, when you do that, your head tends to tilt a little bit because the sternomastoid catches here a little bit, and so your head just goes a little to the side. So the axis of this is not straight up and down. If you take a perfect vertical, it's going over slightly, and it's not coming straight to the front. If you look at the shoulders, they're coming over this way, and his head's going that way. So I always put in center lines because I think they're very helpful, and they eventually go away, but they're very helpful. In terms of facial expression, I said that at a certain point in the first Darwin came on the scene in the late 1900s, and he said, along with the Origin of Species, it had a second book, and he said that facial expressions are, they're a universal thing amongst human beings. And then that theory got poo-pooed, as in a sense, and Margaret Mead came along in the 1930s, I believe it was, went out to New Guinea and studied the natives there who had never seen TV, never seen a magazine or had much contact with the West, and she came back with the idea that was applauded, and I think she eventually won the Nobel Prize. I'm not sure, but I think so. And the theory was that facial expressions are derived from your culture. So if you smile in New York and then go to Papua New Guinea, maybe they don't mean the same thing. Maybe you'll get in trouble, or I don't know. She became rather famous for that, and she was absolutely, positively wrong. Facial expressions are what Darwin originally said. They are a universal language, and it is why they are so powerful in visual art. You just think about walking up to somebody. If you walked up to this guy and he had just a flat, neutral look to his face, and actually that's quite hard to do because facial expressions are so subtle and there are so many. You think of amplitude, and then the degree which they're turned up or down, and then you have 6 major expressions, and then you have combinations of expressions. I think the current thought is that there are about 7,000 recognizable variations of expressions based on 6 major ones, and then there are combinations, as I said. And the man who came along and kind of figured that out was Paul Ekman, and he is, I believe, still alive. It's one of the great regrets of my life that I didn't meet him when I was in San Francisco teaching out there, because he was teaching at University of California in San Francisco, I believe. Anyway, he came along, did the same studies that Margaret Mead did, and found just the opposite, that this is a universal language. So when you're studying art, if there is something, there's so much mystery in art. What they call the ineffable, what you can't put into words, what you can't describe, what you can't teach. But you can teach the structure of the nose. You can teach the structure of the mouth, how to make a mouth, how to make a nose, how to make a body. And but you have to get analytical about it. It's kind of a little bit of a bait and switch. You go into art to express, and then you very quickly learn that if you want to express at all, you have to analyze. You have to think about something and boil it down and figure it out and read what the experts say and all that. So that's what this video and others are about. When I came along in the 70s, there wasn't the atelier movement. There was none of that. People didn't know how to do things. It was the kind of height of the abstract movement, and if you wanted to draw in a class realistically, you got a lecture. And now people, that's been revived. So as Rodin said, when you break a tradition, it doesn't come back right away full steam. You have to figure out how it was done and then start doing it again. But with facial expressions, it really is a fascinating time to be alive, because Ekman has done this research on it, and the things that we know intuitively, everybody in the world knows a smile, and they react to a smile, and they react to very subtle variations of a smile. And so what Ekman has done is kind of boil it down for us, put it into one. He has a lot of books, but there's one in particular that I'll mention later that is, for an artist, it's really very good. So this is an analysis, an analytical breakdown of how you do these things. There's 6 major expressions. We'll go through them. Here we have happiness. So you have a smile. And what I have done on this head here is I have created the smile facial expression on the left side, and as I turn to the right side, it's not as developed, but you can see it's a neutral expression. He's a little contemplative because his eyes are closed, and it's just neutral. It's kind of Buddha-like, because his eyes are closed. He's not expressing. So not much in the gesture, and nothing in the face. It's very serene and calm and all that. So what takes this and makes it into that, or makes it into a face that is angry, or one that is sad, or one that is surprised? So of the expressions, happiness is the only positive one, I'm sad to say. Surprise is a neutral expression. And then you have, if you think of kind of negative emotions, you have sadness, anger, disgust, and fear. So that's 6. And then they combine in various ways, and you get all the variations. And it gets to be a very subtle visual language of the face. So that's what we're going to be attempting here. I'll refer to this when I'm showing you what's happened here. And then when I finish with this, I'll go on and perhaps change this, or maybe do that one, into another facial expression like surprise or anger or fear.